Good morning. I want to thank everybody for joining us this morning for our next SAEM next session, as we're calling it. Today's session is on venues. We've been doing this now for around 3-4 weeks. We've had everything from focus on entertainment. We've had sports, we've had ticketing, and we had performing arts. And like I said a second ago to a few of you, that we thought venues was important enough that we will highlight another week session with venues. And so we'll be introducing everybody here in a second to our group, but we have a fantastic panel. But I would like to make a comment first about our staff that comes on, because we have so many students and alumni on here. We've got Bob Durda, who's our department chair, Paige Bill, Teresa Gregory, Kendra Ross, that's our staff. And then we've got Steve Tanzilli, who's our dean. So I think everybody's on here. He's the dean of the School of Business. And like I said, I appreciate everybody coming on. Secondly, I'd like to introduce Melissa Santucci. Melissa is one of our SAM students, and she's going to be our co-moderator. Although she'll never be able to get a word in edgewise with me, so it's not a problem. But just to tell you a little bit about Melissa, for those of you that don't know Melissa, she is a marketing and promotions intern at Stage AE, ambassador for both Lane 1 and CID Entertainment, some of the VIP organizations. This past year, Melissa served on the executive board of the SAM Club as their marketing coordinator, and she has been elected as the entertainment coordinator for this year. So she's very busy. She's very busy in the entertainment side and venues. So we thought she would be perfect for this. And with that, we just have a few housekeeping items. Maybe, Melissa, you can mention to the audience here about questions and things of that sort.
Yeah, sure. So just to remind everyone, it is recording so that you can watch it later on SAM's YouTube channel if you'd like. Questions we're going to do in the chat, and then we're going to save them to the end just to save a little bit of time. But for right now, if everyone wanted to introduce themselves in the chat and tell us where you're coming from, that'd be great.
Excellent. Yeah, throw your questions in there, because what we're going to try to do, as we've been trying to do for all of these, is run these about 45 minutes with our group and our panel, and then leaving maybe 10 to 15 minutes left for questions. Secondly, before we head over to our panel, we would like to bring on our SAM alum, Mr. Adam Valen. Adam is the marketing director for Brian Drusky and Drusky Entertainment. He's one of our former alums, also a guitar extraordinaire for Nevada Color. And we've been talking to Adam because with working with Brian, and this fits right in with the venues, you know, it's so tough in what's going on for especially the smaller venues, the clubs, the small promoters, unlike maybe the Live Nations and the AEGs out there, to just survive when this all came down. So I don't know a lot about it, but that's why we wanted to bring Adam on. There's an organization that's come together, and I believe that, you know, we have some good information to tell our students. And if there's any action that our students need to take, Adam, to help along the cause, we thought it'd be good to give you a forum to speak to them. So Adam Valen.
Yeah, thanks for the intro, Ed. Love what you guys have been doing every week with these SAEM panels, discussions. These have been great. And thank you so much for inviting me to talk here. So as you mentioned, I'm the marketing director for Drusky Entertainment, but also am the Pennsylvania precinct captain for the National Independent Venue Association, which is a national collective of about 2,000 plus independent venues and promoters across the country that are all facing the same issue of essentially an industry extinction, just due to the fact of the COVID-19 pandemic, shutting all of our independent venues down for the foreseeable future. And with that being said, the statistic across the nation amongst all of our 2,000 plus members is that 90% of us are likely to close without any sort of federal intervention over the next 6 months of this pandemic. And what we're asking today for the National Independent Venue Association is they have an ongoing campaign called SaveOurStages.com, urging fans to please go to that website to write to your legislators today, stress the importance of these independent venues and promoters that have helped garnered the support and start of many of today's, greatest art, today's and yesterday's and tomorrow's future great artists. For example, the Troubadour in LA gave birth to Elton John's first U.S. performance, which is one of the independent venues under the NEVA umbrella. First Avenue in Minneapolis, birthed some of the greatest performances from Prince, which was also under the NEVA umbrella. So many of these venues are at risk of closing, as we sustain no revenue, but we still have all of the expenses that we have to incur there. And as we keep saying with the National Independent Venue Association, the music industry was the first to close and likely going to be the last to open. So we're urging our fans today, visit www.saveourstages.com, write to your legislators today. If anybody has any more information or needs any more information on NEVA specifically or how they can help, I'll drop my email in the chat. But thank you guys. Yeah, thank you guys for allowing me to talk on that. And looking forward to more of these in the future.
No, that's great. Okay. Yeah. Make sure that we have the information so that everybody can respond to that, because I mean, again, it's tough for so many people right now. And it's good to see this organization come together like that and try to make something happen. So we appreciate it. Good. All right, let's get on with our panel. I'm just going to run right through everyone here before we get into our questions. I'm going to start off with Jay Roberts. Jay is the general manager at Empower Field at Mile High in Denver, home of the Broncos, former Pittsburgher. Jay's got over 25 years of experience in facility management. He's a former general manager and employee here in Pittsburgh at Three River Stadium, Mellon Arena, Consol Energy Center. He's been on the road quite a bit. Done a lot of great events. Of course, he's worked with the Rolling Stones, U2, McCartney when they opened up Consol. I mean, just a lot. And I was glad that he was able to join us because, Jay, we've been just good friends for a long time and that we've done concerts together and followed his career and was excited that when he got out to Mile High that we could have him on today. So, Jay Roberts, thank you for joining us. We're going to continue on. Thanks, Jay. We're going to continue on with Kelly Tucker Jones. Kelly's the general manager at Live Nation Entertainment and the S&T Bank Music Park, which we know that is formerly our amphitheater out there at Star Lake, as many of us, I guess, go back and say it, but we've got a brand new name and we want to make sure we remember that, S&T. She was also the general manager of the Jamboree in the Hills, I know for many years. I'm not sure how many years. Maybe you can tell me how many years you did that.
15.
Oh my God.
I know.
That's amazing. And just briefly, I got a chance to get to know Kelly a little bit better when our company became Clear Channel, and Clear Channel was doing the events down there. So we all kind of became one. And I must admit, I hadn't been to the event and went down there and I was like, wow, it was such an amazing event. I mean, and going on down there drawing, how many people for a weekend would it draw typically?
Over 100,000 people over 4 days.
And that was before everybody else was drawing all these people. You were really one of the earliest festivals. How long had it been going on, by the way?
It ran for 42 years.
Okay, so my God, yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Jeez. And you had some tremendous bands out there. So we had a chance to work together there. And if I'm remembering, did you also tell me you had a son or daughter that went to Point Park?
Yeah, my son just graduated.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Cinema program. Cinema.
Oh, very good. Okay,
Yeah.
Great. Well, we appreciate you coming on. We appreciate everything that the amphitheater has done. I know we had Morgan on a couple weeks ago, and we've had our interns there, and we've had people. So we appreciate everything you guys are doing. Next, I want to move on to Scott Zimmerman. Scott is the general manager of the UPMC Events Center at Robert Morris, rather new. Prior to joining out there at that place, he, of course, has worked in quite a few venues in Pittsburgh. I know that he's worked at Heinz Field. He was at PPG Paints Arena. He's been director of operations at the Peterson Events Center. A lot of background in ticketing, doing a lot of things for them in the days of SMG. And now he has the opportunity to run a new facility out at Robert Morris. And also, Scott, as many of our students know, is one of our part-time teachers in venue management. So Scott, we appreciate you coming on. Okay.
Thanks, Ed.
And then lastly, Rob Thompson. Rob is the director of stadium events at Heinz Field. He has had many, many jobs at Heinz Field and Three Rivers, as we just heard before he came on. Rob's done a tremendous job, and they've also been phenomenal to Point Park. I know that Rob and his boss, Jimmy Sacco, have really just been fabulous. We've had so many interns over there, several of our employees working in the club suites and just in operations. We do tons of tours over there with our students, and so you couldn't be any better partners for us, especially for our students. And so that's real important, especially since we have a venues class. So Rob, I appreciate you coming on. And also, Rob and I were just talking offline for those of you that weren't online in time. Rob was working at Three Rivers and then at Heinz Field. At the time, we did NSYNC, which was the last show over at Three Rivers before its stadium got torn down, and was also working the first show at Heinz Field, which happened to be NSYNC. So we appreciate you coming on, Rob.
Thanks, Ed.
All right, man. Before we get into these questions here, if I could, I'd just like to kind of go back and start with Jay. Jay, you're at Mile High right now. I think our students sometimes find it interesting, even though I just read off a lot of your background. Just give us a brief understanding of how you got to Mile High, and then we'll get into the questions for the pandemic as we want to discuss.
Sure. So I started my career with SMG, which is now integrated into ASM Global. But I started at Worcester, Mass. At the Centrum in the box office. For those of you who haven't already heard the gospel from Jason Varnish, the box office is actually a pretty good place to start because you deal with everybody in the industry. You deal with the promoters, you deal with the agents, back in the day, you dealt with record labels.
Right.
You dealt with Ed dealing with marketing and promotions and ticket deals, and you dealt with the finance department. And so you dealt with everybody within the building as well as everybody with the shows coming in. So it was a great place to learn the business for sure. From there, I ended up going to Peoria in the box office at the Peoria Civic Center, and then went to Three Rivers Stadium, which as a Pittsburgh kid, and Ed, you said former Pittsburgher, once a Pittsburgher, always a Pittsburgher.
There you go. Right. Yeah, that's exactly right.
So I got transferred to my like dream job, Pirates and Steelers. I mean, I was in heaven. And
Right.
So I worked there. As we talked about earlier, I worked one of the most memorable concerts I ever had, which was the Grateful Dead's third to last show before Jerry died, which is on the picture behind me.
Mm-hmm.
And some pretty incredible times. It was long enough ago that the Pirates were winning and went to the NLCS championship that year. So that dates it a little bit.
Yeah.
But then I ended up going over to Mellon Arena, and I ran the box office over there. I moved up to operations manager, director of operations, assistant GM. Then I moved to another dream job of mine, and I ran the USTA National Tennis Center where they played the US Open, and managed the operations for that for a short period of time before coming back to Mellon Arena as the general manager. And that was pretty amazing. Old building, pain in the butt, as several people on this call would know, but definitely near and dear to a lot of our hearts as well. And then helped open up Consol Energy Center, which was an amazing experience. From there, I ended up moving out to St. Louis and managed at the time it was called the Scott Trade Center, where the Blues play, and the Peabody Opera House, which was a renovated 1929 theater, amazing place. From there, ended up coming out here to Denver, and hopefully I'm not going any further west. I keep moving further and further.
Right.
I'm hoping to
Right.
stay and stay from there. But that's, in general, that's my career progression.
Right.
I've been fortunate enough to work with a lot of amazing people, have a lot of amazing bosses.
Mm-hmm.
They've all helped me get to where I am.
You've definitely made some great moves, and that's fabulous. So we appreciate that. Kelly, about yourself, you said you were down there, of course, just maybe briefly, talking about how you made your move over to S&T.
Yeah, it was to kind of like grew up in the business, I would say. My family was kind of involved. So, I never said no to anything. I ushered at Capitol Music Hall. I worked in the box office. I was slinging T-shirts at Jamboree in the Hills, whatever. I just wanted to learn every aspect of the business. And so I was, Jamboree and Capitol Music Hall most of my career. And then this opportunity came up and I never have let an opportunity pass me by. So, I was very familiar with this venue as I had, been a patron here many, many, many times. And, I've brought some staff up from Jamboree to kind of help in certain areas at times. So it seemed like the perfect shift in career for me. So to, still be a part of the company that I have loved for so long and part of the business. So this would be, it's my 4th year here.
I was going to say, it's your 4th year, and it's a fabulous venue. Everybody, most people have all been out there, and there's been so many phenomenal shows, and it's really, it's been around for a while now. It's not a brand new building, although it changes names like every other place. But no, it's a great venue, and it's great that you're running it. We can't wait to get back out there to see some shows, seriously. Scott, briefly.
Yeah, thanks, Ed.
Yep.
So, yeah, like Jay, I've had the fortunate opportunity to work with some amazing people and some folks that have mentored me and helped me learn along the way. And quite honestly, a bunch of them are on this call today. And, I was hired in 1995, similar to Rob. I think we started about the same time. We both worked for SMG at the time. And Jay Roberts was the person that first hired me. I don't know, good, bad, or indifferent on his end, but certainly I started in the box office at the Civic Arena, and then moved on to become the box office manager as Jay progressed, and had some opportunities to become the director of ticketing, where I oversaw ticketing for SMG on a national level, and then took a stint of operations at the Peterson Event Center, and then came back to the Consol Energy Center right about the time when it was opening to help assist some of the projects that were going on at the time. And if there's one thing that is very constant in this business, it's certainly change, as we're obviously understanding today. And, I worked for, Jay and I both worked for SMG for a really long time. And at the time, I wasn't in a position where I was, Pittsburgher, like as Jay said, long time, born and raised. And, the company lost the account. AEG came and took the account over and provided me an opportunity to become the director of booking at that time. So I spent about 5 or 6 years as director of booking at the PPG Paints Arena, and then decided to move on to go to work for Oakview Group, which I'm now working for here at Robert Morris. And for me, the Robert Morris thing, because people ask me all the time, it's a pretty significant quality of life change for me, most importantly, because, certainly the work-life balance has become pretty important. Tell people every day that, my commute went from, 50 minutes to now 8 minutes. Mm-hmm. And with traffic, it's still 8 minutes. I don't run into any of those issues. So it certainly takes a lot of stress. And like I said, it's been, I think one of the things that's stands out for me on this call is, as much as this is a bunch of folks that have worked in the business at a lot of places and bring a wealth of experience, the names and faces on this call, and even the folks that are listening, it's a very relationship driven business more than anything else. And I think that that's an important piece of, how you professionally develop and move forward with some of the things that you're trying to accomplish career-wise.
Well, you're definitely right about that. And I know that, again, so many of our students and alumni too, that, we insist on at least one internship before they graduate. They do, shadowing. And we've been really lucky because around Pittsburgh and really in other cities too, everyone's been so great to bring the students in and let them learn. So, and it's good to hear all of your stories, because we know that there's just so many things that you've done to get to where you've gotten. So, Rob, how about in your case?
Ed, I started my career back in 1995 as an intern at Three River Stadium, as you mentioned. Right. And I think it was by fate that I'm here, because the day of my interview, the HR manager, Michelle, called off sick. And ironically, I was interviewed by Jimmy Sacco, who was the general manager at the time. And when the receptionist informed me that Jimmy was going to conduct the interview, of course, you know, being a college senior, I assumed it would be a difficult interview. It was pretty smooth. Jimmy was nice to deal with. And ironically, he offered me the internship 2 weeks later. So that's how my career started at Three River Stadium. He hired me, meaning Jimmy Sacco, in March of '96. And from 1996 through 2000, I gradually made my way up from the assistant ops manager to director of special events, and helped to oversee the closing of Three River Stadium. And then in 2001, I was hired full-time by a subsidiary to the Pittsburgh Steelers, PSSI Stadium LLC, to help manage the special events here at the facility. And to Scott's point, it is a relationship-driven industry. Everyone on the call and on the panel, I have a relationship with. And also the mentoring part of it. Jimmy Sacco has been a great mentor. He taught us that. And that's why it's critical for us, Ed, that we reach back to a program like yours that we have a great relationship with, to hire multiple interns. I think there's been at least 2 or 3 full-time employees here at Heinz Field that come directly from your program. So, you know, that's my career in a nutshell. It's been great so far. And it's been 25 years. Those 25 years went by so fast at this point. So.
Wow. Well, you're right. I know Megan Jones and Megan McCabe, 2 of our alum, have done very well for you guys in the clubs. And it's just been fabulous when we talk to them. It's just so great, you know, and they've had a great time working there. I know Megan Jones has moved on, and Megan's doing her thing now, McCabe. But I always enjoy coming over there, bringing tours over or something, and I'll be walking down through the hallways, and I'll look, and I'll hear somebody yell my name, and I go, well, what are you doing here? And I go, I'm just working here. And I go, good, you know.
Yeah, it's been
But
great.
no, you guys have been great. Everybody, really appreciate it. All right. Anyways, I think, you know, we've all been talking about this pandemic, and that's what a lot of these sessions have been about. We don't want it to all be doom and gloom like it can be out there. We're trying to encourage our students to know that there are going to be opportunities when things come to settling here. But basically, I just want to start off, we can just go right down the list here. You know, how did this virus hurt everybody? In other words, maybe we'll start with Kelly, for instance. You know, I'm thinking back in the beginning of March, I know when we came from Point Park to teach online, I'm thinking, my God, she's got so many shows on sale. It's just starting to roll with her and Morgan and everybody getting things rolling. And all at once, it's starting to put the brakes on. So how did that affect you?
Yeah, so, you know, just like, you know, everyone else, a little bit crazy at first. You know, I think the initial thought was, you know, well, we're probably not going to have anything. Our season won't start until July. So we'd have to just, you know, that's okay. You know, in your mind, you rationalize, okay, give us a little more time to open up, get everything ready, you know. And then, of course, as the quarantine continued, and then we saw more and more artists, you know, either postponing or just canceling their tour, just come to the realization, you know, that the season is basically going away. And it's been difficult, you know, because, you know, many of my friends, my coworkers have been furloughed through the process. You know, the unknown, I guess, has probably been the biggest struggle, right? Not really knowing when it's going to pick back up. You know, everybody's very anxious to return back to live, but how we can make that happen, right? So it definitely, you know, I think the unknown of it was probably the worst part. But now that we know, you know, okay, we're not going to have a season, right? So we've had to refund, you know, a lot of the ticketing process, you know, refund, or people hang on to it. And hopefully with the tour reschedules for 2021, we're going to have a full season. You know, so it's just been, you know, now we're kind of looking at, you know, how does live change moving forward, right? Because
yes,
it's going to change, right? Our normal is going to change. So it's a lot of, you know, researching this, you know, Live Nation has been amazing throughout this entire process, as far as like, you know, doing research and talking to the right people and trying to figure out, you know, how can we safely reopen? Because not only are we anxious for the business to come back, you know, our patrons and customers are anxious for that kind of normal to come back. So, I mean, you know, I'm very positive about it. I think it's going to come back in a very strong way. it's just the patience part of it. Like, we've just got to kind of wait it out, which is sometimes the hardest part.
Of course, yeah. And it seems like Live Nation has been, like you just said, very proactive from what I've read, and just jumped on things really ahead of the game, trying to figure out, to answer for a lot of other people. They kind of like look to Live Nation to, what are we going to do? It's because they're so big and they've got so many great people and all the things we know. So I've liked reading all that. And I know, our students know that too, because we talk about that in our class a lot. But yeah, I think the unknown, even for them, is difficult, right? And
Sure.
Then we don't know when the bands, want to be back on tour buses, as we all talk about, and hotels, even if you're ready, right?
That's it. There's so many layers of it, which, not everyone always understands. They're like, well, why aren't you opening the venue? Well, there's another piece to it, because then you have to make sure the artists are ready.
Yeah.
And, to come back out. I mean, we've all kind of seen what happened with the Chase Rice thing over the last few days. So artists are obviously going to be very careful about what they decide to do. Right. And then, the number one thing is always safety. I mean, I'm sure everyone on this call agrees. Like we always say, the number one thing is always safety, right? So we want to make sure not only the artist, our staff, our patrons, that we're, we want to do it the right way. We want to kind of lead the industry in how to bring it back the right way.
Exactly. And I think yesterday we were talking briefly about, I see Nashville was doing a show outside their stadium and all that. But like we talked, in many cases, it's okay if the artist lives within that area, like they would in Nashville or maybe LA or whatever. So it's a little more difficult, because that doesn't mean the band has to get on a bus and travel, or, that type of thing.
Exactly. So yeah. I mean, we're definitely, Live Nation is rolling out some of the drive-in concerts, which I'm sure people have seen, in a few weeks, Indianapolis, St. Louis. So kind of like the first step in trying to reopen in some capacity, and it's right now state by state.
Yeah.
So
that's the other thing. You got to go with the state by state type thing too. I appreciate that. Let me jump over to Jay. I wanted to see how that affected you, Jay, out at Mile High, because were you going to do any concerts by chance, or were you just basically getting ready for football, when it started?
No, we were getting ready in full swings, getting ready for Monster Truck, Supercross, Chesney, Mex Tour. We had a really big game of Mexico against Colombia. We were thinking we were going to do about 60,000 for that. We have a bunch of annual events, Bacon and Beer, Barbecue Fest, those types of events that we have every summer. And so just like Kelly said, it was sort of a slow pain. We started canceling them slowly, and then all of a sudden the whole season was shot. There is some positivity out there. I know, Ed, you didn't want us all to be negative. So the positivity is that we had Chesney was supposed to be August 8th this summer. We had already had about 45,000 tickets sold back in March. So it was going to be a great show. We finally announced that the show was going to be moving till next year, end of July. And so once they announced it, with the new policies, you have 30 days to refund your tickets. And we're getting close to the end of that 30 days now, and there haven't been a ton of refunds, and actually people have been buying tickets. So we're just a little bit under where we were when we canceled it, which is pretty great considering nobody knows what's going on and everybody's nervous about seeing events. So the fact that we were able to hold our own with that show, I was really excited about. And so we're working full speed ahead for next summer. We're working on a Gold Cup match and an international rugby match and a whole bunch of other stuff for next year. A bunch of concerts are talking, but not really. As Kelly said, the concert industry is, I think, a little bit behind the sports industry in terms of prepping to come back. My last X number of months has been a little bit of coming into the office, banging my head against the wall all day, and then going home, relaxing, taking some aspirin, coming back in and banging my head against the wall, because we're full scale. How do we get fans back in the stadium for football? And you feel like you're making a lot of progress, and then a week like this, when you see all the negativity out there about spiking, we just don't know. But we're working on a plan. We've spent a lot of money on different safety mechanisms, purchasing electrostatic sprayers. We bought a UVC cleaning, disinfecting system to go under the escalator handrails, because we don't want people to be on the elevators. So we want to push them to the escalators, but we want them to feel comfortable holding on to the handrails. So we spent a bunch of money on that. We're a 20-year-old building, so our building wasn't built with bipolar ionization for the HVAC system. We're putting that in. We've renovated all the bathrooms with touchless toilets, sinks, paper towel dispensers, soap dispensers, the works. It's a pretty massive undertaking for a building of this size. But we've been going step by step, going through every little detail, trying to knock out as many things as we can, so that when we go into our city and our state to put in our variance, which will happen in the next couple of weeks, we're going to put in a variance and ask, hey, we want to have we have to put in a variance just to host a game without fans, because our rules are so strict in Denver right now. But we're going to put in a variance to host some fans. We haven't finalized the exact details, but we're looking at a bunch of different options with social distancing and how to make sure that we can have a good experience. We're probably going to go cashless. We're going to put in reverse ATMs to take care of people that don't have a credit card. There's a huge list. I've got my whole team working every day on every little detail about how we can reopen safely and successfully.
Well, I'll tell you what, just to listen to you talk there, and I'm sure it's very similar with just about every venue, there was just so much going on, and when we talk about venue management and running a venue and all of that type of thing, somebody thinks sometimes you just, take the phone call, you book the venue, people come, almost like a promoter. But, you and I were joking maybe last week when I said, well, what are some of the things we could tell our students maybe who are wanting to get into venue management that might be something that continues on? And you said, learn how to clean a stadium. I've learned more about cleaning than I've ever learned about cleaning in my life. Your wife probably loves that you're learning about cleaning. Now do it in the house.
It has been a huge learning experience for me. I mean, cleaning in the past was a much different scenario. It was more clean to make it look good. Now it's clean to make it safe. And there's a huge difference. And so learning about all the different processes, we've purchased some robots that have UVC light in them. I mean, we've done a lot of different things to figure out how to make this safe. We've been learning about testing, because we're going to end up testing the players a lot. We've got a 20-page infectious disease emergency response plan. We've got, it's overwhelming the amount of detail that we're going into to make sure that we are prepared to open in a safe manner. So everybody out there who thought cleaning was not important, it was always important. It just wasn't glamorous and was a real pain in the wazoo for everybody who had to manage it. It's still a pain in the wazoo for anybody who has to manage it, but it's super important. I mean, our cleaning manager is front and center in every meeting we have. He's in meetings with the president of the team. He's on league calls. I mean, all of a sudden, that is elevated dramatically. And
imagine
I think that will fade a little bit, but it's not going to go away. I think a lot of things that are happening now are going to continue on. They might increase the cost of the operations of a building, but that makes it even more important, because how can we do these things more efficiently? I mean, our first guess spreadsheet of what it was going to cost to clean the stadium for a Broncos game, even at a reduced capacity,
right,
50% capacity, was going to be triple the normal cost to clean the stadium. Triple. I mean, we're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars to clean the stadium from week to week. So that job becomes really important, because the more you can be efficient, effective, use those dollars wisely, make smart decisions,
right,
make a huge impact on the budget.
Yeah, no doubt. Okay. Rob, I'm sure you're just sitting there listening because you're stadium to stadium. And I know, for instance, you guys, because I live here, I know you had the Stones coming in. You had other big shows. How did this, going back to March when this all came down, same thing probably for you, right? Knocked you off your seat.
Yeah, as I listened to Jay, I just thought through that whole process that we're currently going through now from a cleaning standpoint. But when it comes to the events, Kenny Chesney of course, also here was postponed, and it's been rescheduled again for May of 2021. We're still working on a new date for the Rolling Stones for 2021 as well. The other big impact that, you know, some of us don't realize is we host here almost 300 to 350 corporate events in our club spaces. And between the time frame of when the pandemic started in our country, we had to cancel almost 80 corporate events. So imagine telling a bride that we have to postpone, cancel, or reschedule her wedding reception. The other big impact too is that we have a pretty expansive tour program. The month of May is our busiest month. And since this all started, we had to cancel almost 200 tours, and that numbers continues to grow. So it's been a drastic impact on our business. And as Jay alluded to, we're still going through that process of figuring out if there's going to be fans at our stadiums or what percentage there will be and how that selection process will happen for each season ticket holder's account. As Jay talked about the cleaning aspect, I agree. I never thought I would learn so much about how to clean a facility, the different options. We actually had something done with a drone that, I don't know if Jay's seen this yet, but there's a drone now that supposedly can clean seats in an entire stadium. I don't know how effective it is, but we're looking at all options as well, just to clean the facility in hopes of having fans here at our facility at our first preseason game sometime next month. But that still remains to be seen.
So there's so many things that are just to be advised, as we say, right? Every day you come in and maybe you get a new email from somebody that says, here's what we know today, but we don't know for sure if this is going to be the case. Hard to prepare for that when you're in venue management, I'm sure.
Yeah, I don't know if you heard Jay when he mentioned about, you know, coming in and he goes home and bangs his head off the wall, right? Because things are changing so much. You have to adapt each time that you hear new news from the NFL or changes in policies from your state or the federal government. So,
you know, and interestingly, when we had our first entertainment one, we had Stuart Ross on here and a few other people. They said that, you know, we're looking at a lot of the sports teams to, you know, lead the way for us to figure out what we're going to do in some cases in entertainment business to see how they, and it's exactly what you're talking about, you know, because they knew that concerts would be canceled in the summer, but football will be coming up. And you know, like everybody, that, you know, you want to make sure that the folks are feeling comfortable coming back to the venue for whatever the event is. It's one thing to sell the ticket for an event, but then you got to make sure people feel comfortable. And I'm sure that's got to be a dilemma for everybody, wondering, are we going to convince the people that we've done our job? Is it safe? Especially when you see some negative publicity come out, because anybody can kind of just do an event, you know, like we saw recently, and it kind of messes up the whole system because it's, you know, you can't control everybody. Scott, you're dealing, I know that, you know, you had a bunch of events scheduled for the summer out of Robert Morris because you'd had a pretty good concert season in the last couple of years since you opened, and all at once that was put on hold. The same thing for you, especially taking over a brand new venue.
Yeah, I think to the one of the points that Kelly made initially, you know, when as this was occurring, we really thought, you know, as frustrating as it was a temporary time period for us where we might sit around and be idle for, you know, 3 or 4 weeks and then ramp it back up. You know, we didn't quite get a full year under our belt. We actually closed up shop, I think, May 12th here, while we were in the midst of, you know, we're a small Division I school that had basketball playoffs going on. The men had qualified for the NCAA, which was a big win for them. On Tuesday night, we ended up having a high school basketball game on Wednesday night and closed on Thursday, and didn't complete the rest of the women's tournament that was still scheduled to play that week. So, and yes, we've had a couple of events canceled, but, you know, in addition to just the live side of it, the entertainment side of it, you know, the other piece that we're dealing with is how campus is approaching the comeback to campus. And, you know, we obviously commencement was indefinitely postponed, and we probably had about 15 or 16, to Rob's point, private events that were either internal or external in our conference center that have postponed, and we had two major conferences, regional conferences that we were hosting that have actually canceled. So, so it's been a pretty significant impact, obviously, to that piece of it. And every week the campus is meeting as a group. Their emergency management team meets as a group and talks about getting folks back to campus and what that plan is going to be. And it's forced us. We've ultimately us on the panel been in the business a really long time, and it's kind of forced us to reimagine and rethink how we end up producing events and what our crowd flow is. And it's not to the points that Jay and Rob are making. It's not certainly just about the people coming in the doors. I mean, you're managing the food and beverage aspect of it. You're managing the ins and outs of the restrooms as some things that people don't think about. So, it's certainly got us to a point where we meet quite frequently and participate quite frequently in industry-wide events such as this to kind of talk through what everyone is doing and what the approach has been. And quite honestly, it's probably just about the same across the country. We use a third-party cleaning company. That third-party cleaning company has produced a document that's well over 70 or 80 pages about how we clean both on a non-event standpoint, the daily office cleaning, and then how do we clean on an event standpoint. So I think that's probably the most prevalent thing that's happening, because I think, and you just brought it up as well, Ed, we have to create the perception for people that makes them feel confident and safe when they come back to the building. So whether it's they're coming back in an educational setting or whether they're coming back for an event. The good news is that I think from even my standpoint as a building that's only about 4,000,
Hey, real quick.
we're still getting calls from people about inquiring about holds and availability for spring and summer of next year. So we're really focused on. I think we all agree that 2020 is we're gonna cut the cord on 2020 from a live event standpoint and at least on the concert business and move forward. But
I don't want to do
people still want to go to events for sure, as we're finding out. I think it's just a case of just pushing our way through this and grinding it out on a daily basis to make sure.
No doubt. And I think it's a good point, and I think that just kind of lines into the next question. Everybody's just saying they want to get back to shows and be at events. We hear that. You can even go to a small outdoor little park and see some band playing, and there's like all these people show up, trying to distance them properly because they just want to go do it. And again, I know we don't have a crystal ball, but can we talk about some of the things you've already mentioned, some of the new procedures that might be done differently? For instance, when we come back, have you gotten that far along? Like maybe Kelly, I'm not sure if that's something at the amphitheater that's been talked about. How much difference will we see when they do start up the shows again? I mean, would people still park the same way, come in? I mean, I don't say that you have all the answers, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, not all the answers, but definitely, we utilize, our app to text people, like, this is your arrival time. This is, your time to come through the gate. We would let people know, depending on where they're seated, what bathroom they could use and what concession stand they would use. All completely different than normal, right? Everything's socially distanced as far as entering the venue, social distance going to the restroom. They talk, some of the guys talked about, like, every single thing that you kind of take for granted would now have to be kind of, revamped in a different way. I think we'll even probably see that process continue into 2021, that, how people arrive, how they even depart, right? Because maybe you're just thinking about coming in, but, we can't also have, even if our capacity gets, to 30%, how they exit the venue, right? Still the same exact thing. So we'd have to kind of, utilize our jumbotrons or, our big screens, our LED screens, and say, that this time you will
Yeah.
This part will exit the venue. And then once again, cashless transactions, all of that.
And then
Yeah,
you
it's a
also
different way.
you have the whole other art part of it concerning about the artists, right? I mean, now you're dealing with the fans, which of course critical, but
Sure.
let's not forget about the bands when they come in backstage, and they're going to want to hear how's everything, and I'm sure there's a lot of guidelines that you'll get from their people too.
For sure. I mean, just, as we've been talking through it with the company, it's like meet and greets, for instance, like no more of those. Catering, no more buffets, just the things that maybe, you're not even thinking about really when you return to, back to business, all those adjustments that are going to have to be made. And, whereas most backstages are in complete lockdown anyway, but
Right.
a whole different kind of protocol about who would be back there to interact or come into contact with any artist or their crew that is at the show.
Yeah. In the same lines, Rob, maybe, I know we talked about, some of the different things. You talked about a drone. I did see that somewhere that was cleaning and they were showing that being done. So I'm sure that you've got that whole, I know we talked a lot about cleaning, but just in general, things that you're looking at to make it safe for the fan, and they have to know what those things are, I guess, before they get there.
Yeah, we're currently working on a plan now, communications plan. Once we approve fans coming back to the stadium, all the different methods of stadium arrival, social distancing in the parking lot. We're looking at different ways for our fan base to enter the stadium. Certain accounts, certain seating sections would have to enter certain gates and stay in your specific area. But the key thing for us, Ed, is to make sure we get that information out to the general public in advance so they know. For example, most of our venues, when you return, once they open back up, you're going to have to wear some sort of face covering. But there's hurdles with that, because if you come inside the venue with a face covering, you still want to go to the concession stand. You still want to have a drink of soda or something to eat. But once you finish that, you have to put your face covering on or back on. All that information has to get back out to the public. And I think Scott made reference to this as well. Even the restroom doors, entering, exiting the restroom doors. Certain doors will be enter, certain doors will be exit. We're looking at options too, potentially to have certain vomitories when you walk into a seating section. One may be an enter, one may be an exit. Just ways that we can get the information out, even on our Jumbotron during the game. Just like when you go to the grocery store, we'll ask our fan base to continue to social distance in the seating section, on the concourses, and throughout the facility. So we're continuing to work on that plan. We don't have all the answers yet.
No.
We're trying to get there.
Yeah, the other thing is too, I'm thinking ahead, is that how you're going to be able to police that is also going to be a challenge, right? I mean, you guys all have some phenomenal plans, and I'm sure your staffs are incredible. But the next question that people often say to me, and they go, but how will you police that? We're seeing that right now with the local restaurants and bars here in Pittsburgh who were allowed to, sell liquor during their restaurants, and now they're being pulled back. It's like, how do they police it? Well, they don't have somebody that can go out and look at that every day, so they made a generic swipe and say nobody can serve liquor, right now. So have you considered the policing of it? Like, you're going to put some of your security going to have to kind of keep their eyes open? Do you have ambassadors maybe to look for that?
That's a great point, Ed. That's something we're trying to come up with a training program for our guest services staff and security to gradually inform the fan base, because it is an adjustment. I mean, just like when you go to the store right now, you have to have your face covering on, but at a game, how do you talk to your friend, your neighbor, who's ever sitting next to you? So that we are going to enforce that with our security staff and guest services, but it's not going to warrant an immediate ejection from the facility unless there's multiple offenses throughout the game.
Gotcha.
But even something like that, we haven't come up with a disciplinary schedule yet. We're not sure how to police it yet. We're currently working on that process as we speak.
Of course, yeah. Well, I'm watching our time, so I wanted to just keep us on schedule best we can, but this is such great stuff. Melissa, maybe we should take a look at some of the questions that I've been seeing coming in there. Maybe just read a few off, and let's see if we can get a couple of those answered before we wrap up.
Yeah, sure. So, Anne was asking about how you guys talked about how these things are going to change in venues, touchless payment and that sort of thing. She wanted to know how these things are going to be funded since there were so many shows lost and games lost throughout this year.
Okay, Jay, maybe you want to say something on that?
Sure. Well, we have every building is different. Every building is funded different. We have several different buckets of funding that we're utilizing. Some of the things that are long-term capital improvements to the building are being paid for by our Metropolitan Stadium Football District, which is funded by our rent and things like that. But in general, they approve the UVC escalator cleaning, the bipolar ionization. These are things that will be good next year, but 10 years from now. The things that are for next year, putting up temporary plexiglass and other things like that, some of the other frictionless things we're doing, the way overstaffing, we're just going to eat that. And sports, and especially football, has the benefit over a concert that we've got TV revenue to deal with. So it's not like our whole money is the gate like a concert would be. And so we can better afford to pay for some of these additional improvements, enhancements, extra staffing. Rob was talking about the mask wearing. That's such a controversial issue. Why, I don't understand, but it's a political issue. So we know that's going to be an issue. But we're going to be staffing our building like it's a sold out game for, let's say, a quarter, or 30% of our crowd. Mm-hmm. We'll have a lot of staff that will be able to deal with that issue. If somebody's not wearing their mask, we can deal with that just like we deal with a drunk patron, just like we deal with all of our our rules that we have for our fans.
Okay.
Ed, I wanted to throw this out when we were talking about that. I don't know how many people on this call remember the days when smoking was allowed in arenas.
That's a great point.
Go outside. It was a huge pain in the butt for anybody who was managing a building at that point to have to go tell somebody, nope, sorry, you got to go out in the snow, out on the outside to smoke. It was a huge deal. Season ticket holders got pissed. There was fights over it. We brought in fire marshals that would give people tickets. I mean, it was like a 3-year deal.
I remember that.
It'll be similar, except now all of a sudden it's a political thing and not just a new rule. And so that's a
good analogy. That was a major change. And I know, most of us who've been around, we lived through that. And remember making announcements from the stage, make sure you tell your friend when they come sit down, because there's going to be a cop that's going to put a light on you. And before you know it, you're going to be out of the building. And you didn't know why, because you were smoking inside, so it got very tough there. Melissa, another question, please.
Yeah, so Shelby asked, as someone who's aspiring to be a sporting event or a venue manager, what should she as a student do to gain experience with all this stuff sort of going on? Any opportunities while everything's sort of still shut down?
Sure. Okay. Well, that could be for anybody. Why don't we just throw it out to Kelly?
Yeah, that's kind of a tough one, right? Because it's kind of a tough one. I always say, in my life anyway, anytime I've had an opportunity to learn, I've taken advantage of it. So I would say, as right now as venues are kind of still closed, there's still opportunity to learn, right? So whether you're looking online for additional resources or classes, there's so much to operating a venue that you kind of need to know every single piece of how it all comes together. So I would just encourage you right now to, try to look online, right? We're all kind of still quarantined in a way, so really don't get out much, but to kind of find other resources, or, while we do have at least myself, not as crazy as summer, I'm happy to always talk to people and, maybe kind of give them, some information that I've learned over the years. So I think there's a way to reach out to those people.
That's a great point. No, and that's for all good times. That's why we think those are questions we get all the time. And even though this is a tough time right now and there's no perfect answer, those are always going to be good, because you do want to, we always encourage, reach out to folks like you guys, because you're going to be a mentor. You might not be able to take the first call, but usually everybody's been great. And I mean, our students know that. And I said, sometimes you got to keep calling or email them, because I always tell them that they've been in your situation years ago, and now you're in there an area. So it just takes time. But you're right. Never say no. You always want to learn everything you can. And sometimes by doing that, you'll find yourself going off maybe in a different direction than you had really planned. And it may not be a bad thing. You know, Melissa, maybe one more question. Let's see what you have there.
Yeah, we'll do another sort of advice one. This comes from Grace.
Yes.
She was asking, do any of you have any advice for small, independently owned venues who are struggling to get through the pandemic?
Wow.
That's a tough.
Yeah. Open that up to whoever wants to speak up on that. Scott, maybe you have an opinion on that, because you're really in a new facility, which isn't, you know, massively big, but I think some of these students are thinking about clubs and theaters, kind of what Adam was talking about too, you know.
Yeah, I think that that the independent venues are really in a tough spot currently. Obviously, the governmental which is the push for the governmental programs to help support. You know, it's just trying to get through and identify a plan and transition to rethink how you can get outside of that box and potentially do some events under the current scenario that we're in this phase within the state. You know, there are a lot of certainly a lot of things to consider. I think there are a lot of resources that are still out there that you can tap into from an industry standpoint, as I'm sure Adam will attest to. You know, the independent venues have really established this coalition and have established a bunch of resources around that, and are really active currently. You know, it's the unfortunate world that we're in, that, you know, the lack of those events really impacts, you know, a whole lot of things. It impacts the artist, it impacts the fan, it impacts the employee, it impacts the venue owner, it impacts the local economy. So, you know, I think importantly, slowly trying to build and get people back to attending events and doing it in a safe, secure manner, and utilizing those resources. You know, now from a government standpoint, I mean, there's still obviously some opportunities of grants and loans that are still out there, and I would investigate certainly all of those opportunities that are available to you under the Paycheck Protection Program right now. That protection program just got extended, I think, through August 8th, and there's certainly some opportunities and some money that's still out there to potentially help organizations that are small.
That's all good. And again, as we wrap up, I think that one of the messages we are trying to get each week on these calls is, especially again to our students who are on here, and some of the more recent alums probably that are maybe furloughed, et cetera, just from talking to folks like you guys on the panel and the ones we've had, we feel confident that there's going to be lots of good situations coming down. And that's not just fluff. It's, you know, from information that we're getting from a lot of various people. And I think what we keep hearing is kind of like what Kelly was saying too, and all of us would say, keep an open mind, because some of the earlier folks have said that these new strategies and concepts are now being developed in many which ways. And every week it's a different one, whether it's in marketing. Morgan had mentioned a couple of things when she was on, et cetera, et cetera. You'll just find that there's going to be opportunities that when they do reopen, they're going to need, you know, young people who have been trained in different areas, et cetera, because I can see a GM, any one of us, and somebody comes in and says, we got to do this. And you go, oh my God, okay, who do we know how to do that? Oh, let's get some new college kid who just learned that and has had some structure. And, you know, and I think those are going to be opportunities. And if I also follow by saying what I've read from the bigger stories from Live Nation and some of those that have been out there way ahead of all of us, is that, you know, people are going to want to come back and see events, whether it's live concerts or whether it's football. And we as venue people and who we're teaching have to be prepared for it so that the people feel comfortable. But we should be encouraged that this is just a little interim time that's very difficult, but people like to go out. We all know that. So that, at least for the job side of it, I think that is encouraging. We just have to hang in there. That's all.
Yeah. Hey, Ed, with that question and a lot of people on the panel or on the call that are looking at how do I break into the industry while we're not hiring anybody?
Right.
My best pieces of advice, other than come in the back door from cleaning, my other advice is data analytics. I don't know how many people on this call have spent a lot of time working on data analytics, but when I got to the Broncos 5 years ago, we had 0 people in our data analytics department. We now have 5 people in our data analytics department. That will be growing. It is by far and away the biggest growth of this industry.
Wow.
I knew nothing about data analytics, but I'm learning every day. And the idea, if you don't know that much about it, if you read business intelligence for dummies, learn as much as you can about data analytics, because it's going to be in every department. Marketing departments are using it. Our corporate partnerships departments, one of the reasons we're building this is so we can bring in sponsors and corporate partners, and we have this whole data analytics office where we can show them about our season ticket holders and what their demographics are and all the details about why it's a great idea to be a partner with the Broncos and how the brand recognition is going to help them. Companies like Coke and other companies like that no longer just want to throw a sign up in a building. They actually want to see the data of what they're getting. And so that the idea of taking this time to learn that, because again, no matter which area you're going into, operations, we're putting IoT sensors outside of all of our bathrooms that are going to tell us how many people are coming in. And the concept is the data is going to train us to determine in a back of house area, how often do we have to clean that bathroom based on how many people have entered. And over time, that data will help perfect okay, after 100 people is the perfect time to go clean that bathroom, or it's after 50. Every single department, we're starting to look at data analytics. The idea of being able to go to digital tickets, which a lot of people have done, has exploded that industry and made it so much easier for us to have a one-on-one relationship with the actual customer who's coming to the game. It used to be you gave a ticket and you didn't know who was coming.
Right.
So we know when John or Scott Zimmerman entered the building, we know when he entered the building, and we can, if it's his birthday that day, we could actually send him a notification saying, hey, go use this barcode and get a free soda, or here's a Bud
How
Light.
nice they would be to you, Scott. Even somebody like Jay would still do something like that for you. I mean, I think that's nice. Well, he hired you. I mean, he must like you for some reason.
Exactly.
And for everybody who knows Scott, I will take credit and I will take the abuse for having hired him and brought him into the business. I know it's a double-edged sword.
Oh, no, man. It's been great. I'll tell you what, when I was trying to put the panel together for this one in the first place, I thought, well, there's all kinds of folks we can call because each one of us know people anywhere. But then I said to myself, we have so many phenomenal people right here in Pittsburgh, and it kind of just exploded by way of this whole deal. And, and with Kelly coming on board too. And I mean, it's just, she's down there doing her shows down in Wheeling at the Jamboree all those years with the big shows. I mean, it just made a lot of sense. And I think it's important for our students to know that we've got some great people that are traveling through our lines here. So, and I know that if any student wants to network with any of them, all you got to do is reach out to any one of the faculty. We have all of their emails. I'm sure you guys, again, don't mind getting the emails. What you can answer, you'll answer. But we really appreciate you taking time this morning. Again, I wanted to try to keep it to a little bit more than an hour, but it's important. And so thank you. You're giving back, which is really what it's all about. The last thing I want to mention is next week's session will be on marketing, and Paige Bill will be, of course, she is the marketing guru. Let's just get that title out of the way. She will be handling the marketing thing. And Paige, do you want to mention maybe who's going to be the speakers or anything special about next Wednesday?
Yeah, sure. So I'm really excited about having an alumni who's currently at Facebook, and David Jacobs. I think he graduated, I wanted to say 2008.
Okay.
I don't know. Do you remember, Ed? Do you remember when he was there?
No, it's been a little bit, but he's a great guy. He's going to be fabulous. He's had a nice career, et cetera.
Yes, yes. And so he's with Facebook. He's involved in Messenger and Instagram as well on that. Let's see. I'm having a little bit of a, there we go. Make sure I've got all my folks specifically. So we also are having Andy Perlman.
Yep.
So she's the Senior Director of New Media over at the Pens, and I've seen her before speak about content marketing. So again, on the digital side of things. And then Jameson Antoine, who's with the Senior Strategist with Warner Music Group. And so he has, he's been around all different types of digital marketing. His, most specifically, I think he's involved in email, which kind of speaks to what Jay was talking about with analytics, and there's an awful lot in the back end, but they're gonna talk about, you know, some of the trends that are happening in marketing and entertainment, and answering a lot of questions that people are having, which is what should I be doing right now to prepare for this stuff?
Yeah, yeah.
And a lot of that, if you're looking for ways to spend time, you know, certifications on Google, Facebook, all of those different things, that is a opportunity for, you know, getting some real good baseline skills there that people hire for.
Absolutely. I mean, that sounds great. That ties into so many of the different areas we've been talking about every week. And lastly, I wanted to mention, you know, I see a lot of different heads and shots on the screen here, most of which I can't call out, but a lot of people that I know who have helped our program. And I just wanted to, I'll do a generic thank you to everybody because we've had so many great people who worked from Live Nation to the stadiums to Drusky Entertainment who take on our interns. And it's just really important, you know, and the program is, you know, still relatively young, but getting the word out to folks like you guys who then help the students, and then the students will get ready to help somebody else. And hopefully the students are good when they get there. We try to train them properly in all the 3 different departments, but we always appreciate that because from shadowing to internships to hopefully job hiring, you know, there's so many on this screen that I've seen that I would like to say thanks. So I'll say thanks. So, okay, I think that's it for today. Thanks again. We usually every week, anybody that wants to stay on, whether you be a student or not, will stay on for a few minutes to see how you're doing, but all others are welcome to leave at this point now. Thanks, everybody.